Hey guys, what's going on? Hope you're having an awesome day. Things are progressing here in the garage, making some progress on the front lift. First couple of things it had me do was lower the or disconnect these front mounts on the sway bar. I just went ahead and disconnected it just so it wasn't hanging there and getting in the way. I figured it'd be easier. The next thing was to disconnect the steering linkage from the pitman arm, and after I did that I actually went ahead and disconnected that too, because these tie rod ends bushings are completely shot. So I went ahead, just removed those so I can get some new tie rod ends. And actually Superlift makes a whole new steering linkage that goes with their lift. I might end up just ordering that and replacing this all together instead of replacing the tie rod ends, but we'll see. And then I went ahead and removed the pitman arm after going through 2 pitman arm pullers and not making any progress. As you could see, I knew I wasn't saving this, so I didn't mind if it got chewed up a bit, so I just chopped that down enough until it broke free. So now where we're at is you need to come in and remove the brakes. I do have new brake lines. They're longer and braided steel brake lines, so we'll get those replaced during the process. But according to the paperwork now, I should remove these shocks and these springs. So the shocks shouldn't be a problem. The springs, yeah, they've got these big bolts down here that can be tough to get off. So I've been soaking that in liquid wrench for about a week now. So hopefully we can get something on there and get that off, and without it being too painful of a process. But that's what we're going to go ahead and start doing now, is digging into that. Getting the shocks and springs off of both sides and going from there. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to go ahead and pull the caliper off. Now, if you've worked on any more modern cars, the calipers normally have a bolt on the back. You loosen that up and then you could pull the caliper off. These older Fords, I don't know if any other, I've seen it on older Fords, I haven't seen it on any other cars, but instead of that, you have these pins. You gotta squeeze that in. Give it a little tap and then find something that will fit through there. And you have these pins that come out. Same with the top. And then the caliper will pop off. And I don't know if you saw that, but that's the shim on the back of the brake pad, so that definitely need some new brake pads here. So the rotor itself's not too bad. I don't know if I'll change that. I mean, might as well, since I'm going to have everything torn apart, but and it's not in bad shape. These locking hubs, whether it's locked and that should be unlocked now, but oh, there it goes. Anyway, so yeah, in order to get the shock off, it's this bolt here, the nut up there. Again, I've had them soaking, so hopefully it won't be too bad. I've just set the caliper up there. I know it's not the way you're supposed to do it. It should tie it up, but if it falls and pulls on this line, I'm not too heartbroken because I am going to be replacing that line anyway. So, yeah, I'll go ahead, work on getting these shocks off, see how well that goes, and then from there we'll go to the spring. Alright, so this is just a 18 millimeter bolt with an 18 millimeter nut. That came off easy enough with the impact. The top is not wanting to break free. It's just turning the whole shock. So I have that on there to try to hold it in place, and then it's a 15 mil nut on top that does not want to break free. So I'm going to try to get a breaker bar on there, see if I can get it, and if not, I might just have to cut this off. So let me get a breaker bar and see if I can get it in there or not. Yeah, well, that was stupid. Need to cut it above here so it'll actually pop through. Now, a couple of things. If you decide to cut off a shock, you want to do it up above so it'll fall in. And you definitely don't want to cut this end because this is pressurized. You know, it's full of gas and liquid, pressurized liquid. So if you cut into that, bad things could happen. So you don't want to do that. And then you don't want to make a dumb mistake like I did and cut it on the wrong side so it doesn't actually, still doesn't actually pull through. Alright, so ended up getting out the, ooh, that's still hot. Ended up getting out the angle grinder, just grinding down the end of that. So everything else popped out. That's still extremely hot. Oh, there we go. But got that out of there. Next, pull the spring out and go ahead, lower the jack a little bit, get any tension off the spring. Got to undo this bolt and then this bolt in there, which I don't know if you could see it. I believe it's a 1 1/16 or something like that bolt down there, and then I think that's just a 1/2 inch. This bolt seems to be a little tight, but it is coming off. Let me get the impact. 13 millimeter is what's fitting on there, so yeah, that's what I'll use. Alright, so then I just have this hook that hooks on the top of the spring, bolt that goes on top there. Let's put that back in there. And now for the fun one. Got the socket on there. It's 1 1/8. That seems to be what fits. Get the breaker bar on there and we're actually turning. As you see, I already let down the arm a bit, and no pressure here on the spring. It's loose. Just got to get this bolt off, which is turning. It's not getting any looser or any easier to turn, but it is turning. Guess it's going to fight the whole way. But I will take that over not turning. If anything, it's getting harder to turn than easier as it gets looser. Alright, that thing fought me the entire time coming off of there. I had to do the whole thing with the breaker bar. It never got loose enough to where I would have even been able to get a ratchet or anything else on there to move it. But it finally popped off. We got this plate here, which we need to keep along with the nut. And this should just come right out. So we got the first half of this big stud taken care of. And then you see below all that is another bolt. Well, it's actually part of the stud because that screws down and screws the top of this radius arm down, which since we're replacing the radius arms, that's going to have to come out. And then there's another bolt on the bottom down here. I imagine those are going to be equally as fun, if not more fun, to get out. So I don't know if you can see down there or not, but that's where the bolt from the bottom's coming up. It looks pretty well rusted in there, just like, well, everything else on this truck. So let that all soak, and while that's soaking, could go ahead and go over to the other side, do the same thing. I'm not going to record that because, well, it's the same exact thing as what was over here. So unless anything interesting comes up along the way, then maybe I'll turn the camera on, but otherwise I'll be back after the other side is done. A quick comparison between the spring I just took off and the new ones from Superlift. Obviously a bit longer, a whole lot newer, so much prettier. Looking forward to getting those on, but still have quite a ways to go before we get to that point. Alright, so the other side actually came apart a whole lot easier. But now you're supposed to disconnect the front drive shaft. I just got a screwdriver wedged in there right now so I can break these bolts loose. I already taken the one off the other side. There's two, one on each side. And it's just these two bolts. Hold that in. Now, two things we want to do. Just grab something to tie the drive shaft up with. tie it up so it's out of the way, and then I wrap tape around the ends just to keep those caps from falling out and having all the needle bearings fall all over the place, making a mess and being impossible to put back together. So much easier just to put wrap tape around there, keep the caps on, keep the needle bearings in place. Front drive shaft is now disconnected. I'm gonna go ahead, put these back in. I'm gonna go ahead and put these back in just so I know where they are and where they go. Where I can, I just put the bolts and hardware back, like here, 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 instead of bagging and tagging everything, just because it's much easier to remember where everything goes if it's already there and just need to reconnect it later. Sometimes that doesn't work, in which case, well, I try to put everything in a bag or in some type of pan, but I'm not always great about it, and then or I'll put too many things into one bag and then I'll have to kind of sift through everything. So trying to be a little bit more organized. But yeah, got the drive shaft disconnected. Everything's disconnected here. I think next we have the radius arm nut on the back of there, and then the I-beam nut, and that will drop everything completely down and off the truck. All right, well, there we go. We got the entire front end out. Got a whole lot of rust cleanup to do before we start putting anything back together. Next thing to do is going to be relocate these radius arms. They need to go, I think it's 18 inches back. So I'm gonna have to grind off these rivets. There's one bolt on there and the rest are rivets, so I'm gonna have to grind those out and try to punch them out, then get everything cleaned up, re-drill holes for that, reattach that. Same thing on the other side, get those relocated, get everything cleaned up, then get the radius arms off of here, get them mounted, and then we'll do the drop brackets for the I-beams here, there, and then finally get to put everything back together. But yeah, the rear end was much easier than this. There's a lot more involved in the front end, but we'll get it done. Just not today. I'm calling it a day. Been a couple of days since I've recorded anything. I've been getting out to the garage here and there for, you know, an hour or half hour, as long as I can throughout the week. It's been a super busy week. But I have made some progress. I did get the radius arm mounts off so they can be relocated, but got that off on both sides. As you see, draining the transmission. Had a slow leak, just a couple of drips coming out, so I needed to change out the filter anyway, or the fluid anyway. I didn't want to do a full flush, so just drop the pan, drop the filter, letting that drain out. And yeah, that was definitely, that's not what transmission fluid's supposed to look like. And I don't know if you could see that in the camera or not. Let me see. But there is a bunch of stuff in that filter, so that definitely needed to be changed out. So letting that drain. Got these off, and really the only thing left to get off before I could start putting everything back together is the actual radius arms. Now, this is something I wish I would have done before I lowered everything down, or why the radius arms are still attached and there was some more support, because trying to get that off, It's just moving everything. If everything was still, you know, secured to the truck, I'd be able to get a bit more leverage on there. And also, with these studs being as long as they are, I have not been able to find a deep enough socket. So this one's actually not in too bad a shape, but the other side, like this whole lower half, is just all chewed up and getting worn through. So I did find where I could order some from Bronco Graveyard. So I ordered just brand new studs, so that way I can just chop that off. Then I can get a socket and an impact on there, and hopefully I can work those out. But then there's also another bolt underneath. So I don't know. I'll probably have to roll this all over onto the front, and to be able to get access to that. So yeah, if this was all still up, at least have broken the stud and that nut loose before lowering it down, then it would have been much easier, but yeah, it's already down. Obviously you can't put the radius arms back up to mount because the mounts are off and I chopped the radius arms. And the I-beams are disconnected. I did fit up the drop bracket for the passenger side I-beam and put the bolt in there. It's not tightened up or anything. There's actually two new holes that need to be drilled for that to get that in completely, and then need to take the mount off for the driver's side drop bracket and put the new mount in for that. So that's coming, but before I can even worry about that, I need to get these off. So I'm going to chop those off. It's going to be a couple of days before the replacements come in. So that's why I went ahead and was like, well, while I'm under here, I'm going to go ahead and change out the transmission fluid. I already did an oil change. I do need to still get the transfer case and both differentials swapped out with fluid as well. I'm going to get all of that done, and then I'm going to work on getting these radius arms completely off, so then when I do get the new studs in, I can start assembling everything and putting everything together, which I'm very excited about. I'm impatient. I want this done already. One of the reasons I'm super anxious to get this done is I got new wheels and tires in. They look so much better than the ones that are currently on there, a bit bigger, and I really want to get them on here and see how it looks, see how it rides and everything. All right, so got one side done. I said, here's the top stud, or here's the top stud. Once I get that off and was able to get the impact on there, it came off, needed a little bit of heat, a little bit of coaxing, but did finally get that off. And then was able to just roll this whole thing forward, this whole half axle forward, so then I could get to this back nut, which is right there. I don't know if you can still see the smoke coming off of that or not. But yeah, that's really hot. The bottom was actually harder to get off than the top. But after a bit of fighting with it and a whole lot of heat, it finally came off. So I'll get this cleaned up. We can actually, I want to get all that cleaned up first. We can actually get this radius arm on. I can put the bottom in. I won't be able to put the top in and get it tightened yet until I actually get these new studs in, like I said. But before I do that, I would go this other side. The other half's going to be a little bit harder, just because it's going to be heavier and harder to roll forward to get to the bottom one. But while I do that, I'm probably going to go ahead and drain that as well and get the fluid changed in that. Alright, so in order to move these radius arms, it's supposed to go 18 inches back. Now I do have this, I don't know if that's fuel or brake line or what that is. I had a couple clips on there holding it tight to the frame that I've taken off, and I'll figure out where this can go once it's on there. But Then this is supposed to go back on just like it was up front. They got drill holes, 2 under here, 1 up there, 1 up there. The problem is this transmission cross member here, the bolt is in the way. Luckily, Superlift did provide brackets for when that is the case. So what it does is it takes this bolt out, and then you'll put this plate in, so this bolt will go up top, and then you tighten it down from the bottom, and it puts this down bracket, or this down piece right where the first hole will go. So then that second hole lines up there. So you just have to drill that one, and then these two, and put bolts in there. Which I actually kind of like better that I do have to do that, because that lets me know my measurements are right. So instead of having to measure the 18 inches and possibly get it wrong, having to do that and use these brackets, I know that that's exactly where it needs to be. So, alright, so this stuff takes a while to dry. It says 1 to 2 hours. It was closer to the 2-hour mark. In the meantime, got the bracket cleaned up, got that sprayed as well. Got the other side cleaned up and sprayed. Those are both drying. Drained the front gearbox, and I don't know if that's been serviced recently or that the previous owner just never drove in 4-wheel drive, but that fluid is practically brand new looking. But drained that out. Now here's where the bolt came out of. Just go ahead and put that up there. Trying to get it sort of snug, but I don't want to tighten it completely yet in case anything needs to be thrown. In case anything needs to be updated, or moved around, or this wheel. Just like this. Apparently this wasn't dry completely yet. Still some sticky spots on the frame as well. It's good enough for now. I'll respray everything down once it's all installed, I guess. Alright, so I got a drill hole there. Luckily on this side there's nothing back behind there in any of these bolts. The other side, it's a little crowded over there. There's fuel line right by the fuel filter and fuel pump is over there. So yeah, that side's going to be a little more difficult and need to be a bit more careful. So curiosity got the better of me now that I thought about it, since all the fuel lines are on the other side. I wonder what this actually was. It's not a brake line, it's not a fuel line, because those are run on the other side. I followed it back. It does go to the gas tank, like it is a fuel line, but it's not connected to anything. If I run forward to see where it is in the engine bay, it goes, I don't know if you can see it right down there, but it just goes to right there and stops. It's not connected to anything there either. So if it's an old fuel line or what it is, but Yeah, it's not connected to anything, so I'll probably just go ahead and pull that out of there. Unless anybody knows what that's for and where it's actually supposed to be connected, but it's doing absolutely no good in there, and I was worried about how I was going to get that positioned over top of this when, well, I don't need to worry about that because I can just pull the whole thing out and be done with it. Anyway, let me get my drill and start getting these holes taken care of. All right, guys, so been working under here for a couple of days, just getting rust cleaned up, painting, and getting these last brackets in. So this is the passenger side I-beam. The standard I-beam bolt goes back in there, and then had to drill 2 new holes there and put those bolts in, which drops this down. And then you see there's 2 holes. If you're doing a 4-inch lift, it goes to the top hole. If you're doing a 6-inch lift, it goes to the bottom one. And then here up front, we got this drop bracket. Same thing on this side, just removes the old bracket, and then this new one goes in. It's 2 bolts right here, and then 2 bolts on the other side. And again, that gives you the drop down of 4-inch or 2-inch. This actually has other braces in there, and that is for the super lift steering rod conversion, which I did order, so should get that in here soon, hopefully, and get that all installed. Basically, all that does, instead of having just the pitman arm that comes down and then the one linkage that steers both, it gives it a second pivot point there, so it's a solid bar, and then the steering linkages come off of that. So it's supposed to be a little more stable, but we'll cover that when we get that in. So, like I said, I've been cleaning up rust, painting things. This is actually just dust. This is on there now. And trying to get everything back in place. And see, I almost got this hole lined up here. It's not playing nicely, as you see. I don't know if you could tell, but I've bent that desk guard, whatever you want to call it, on the back side of that. The brake's there on that end, so I'm going to have to do something about that. But right now, I'm just trying to get this thing installed. It's very close. Once I can get that all the way in, put this bolt in, and then we'll get this side lined up. I'll get the radius arm on that side. Was trying to do it all as one piece and struggled with that, so I just pulled this piece out. It just splines that will slide into the drive shaft here, so we can put that back in there, no problem, hopefully. So just trying to get this one half done. Once I get this first bolt in, then the rest should be fairly easy, because then I have a pivot point whenever so I can jack this side up and not have it flopping all around, in theory. So I get that bolt in and we'll go from there. Alright, so got this side in. Everything's just kind of snugged up and not tightened down. This took much longer than anticipated. That's the new radius arm. It is much longer. Goes into the new drop bracket. Here, getting these lined up was not fun. Managed to get the bottom bolt in with no problem, but there's a bit of a twist in this axle. So I could push it and get it lined up, but then there was no way to hold it and get this bolt started. So I ended up using a scissor jack there and pushing down on that end until I got everything lined up, and then just got this bolt in. So it's I don't know if it's the best method, but it worked. So as suspected, this other half has been easier to work with so far. We're just getting this lined up. Here. Now this one actually has new hardware because we had to use the old bolt up there. So now, alright, so I got the bolt in. I had to end up lowering this driver's side down far enough so I could get the bolt in to come from the front to the back. Bolt is kind of long and I didn't want it interfering with the drive shaft or anything. So lowered that down. This definitely has a lot more travel with these longer radius arms. So I was able to get that low and then get this bolt in. All right, we are making progress here on the driver's side. That wheel. Put the back tires on, the new back tires on. They look awesome. Can't wait to show those off. But yeah, got the front side, the front driver's side suspension parts in. It just goes back together the same way it came apart. You put this piece sits right on top of that stud. Put the spring on, and then I just lifted it up to where the spring was snug. There's no pressure on it or anything right now. So I mean, that's the full extension of the spring with no weight. So I mean, as you could tell, that's a lot longer travel than the stock system as well. But yeah, got the spring on, put the clamp on. I don't even have anything tightened down yet. Got the new shock in. I had originally pulled these mounts off of the old radius arms because I thought I was going to have to reuse these, but I don't, because the mounting point is built in, so it just uses the old bolt, goes through, and then the bolt on top. Again, nothing's tight, but definitely you will, if you're doing a 6-inch lift, you need to get extended brake lines, because yeah, like I said, this is fully extended, but it could possibly even go further. You know, I'm sure this spring has a little bit of stretch in it as well when it's traveling. If it's got weight on it and pushing it down, it may even go down a little bit further, but I still have the jack under here, so but yeah, that's definitely yeah, I'd have to stretch it just to get the caliper to fit, and then if you're turning or anything, or if it goes down, you would just rip that line. So I'm glad I did get the braided line, the new longer brake hose, so I'm gonna have to do that. But I'm gonna go ahead, get the other shock and spring done on the other side. So to change out this brake line, there's a clip that goes into this groove here on the back side, and you can pull that out. And it's got a wrench there and wrench there to loosen up the brake line. But before they do that, go ahead, grab some vice grips and pinch that line off. And I just got the caliper sitting here. We'll go ahead and disconnect this bolt. Now, if you're reusing that bolt, there are 2 crush washers on, and it's on there good. Just give that, there we go. There are 2 crush washers on either side if you're reusing that, but this is all getting replaced. I can just pull the caliper off. Now you can see I already did the other side, and you can see that brake fluid is not exactly clean, and there is rust and all kinds of crap inside of there. So it's good that these lines are getting changed anyway, and then I need to completely flush everything out, but this does have an auxiliary off of there. I'm not sure why or for what purpose, but it's there, so in case you needed to tap in to this brake line, I guess, to run it to the back or wherever you need it, it's there. I'm not needing that, so I just need, it does include a little cap. Need to screw that in. And then this is just going to screw on here, replace this, go back in. Then I have new clips that go on the back here. Get that screwed on, push that in, and then that clip will go on the back side to keep everything. It's, you know, got this clip on the front to keep it from pulling it through, and this clip on the back to keep it from pulling out. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to changing out the brake line. Slight change of plans. I was having issues with that caliper, so I ended up having to order a new one. Got the new caliper on, got the brake pads in, got the brake line attached, and brake line attached here and run up to there. So now I just need to put the small clip on the back side of here. But yeah, okay, so anyway, you get the idea. I'm gonna have to do that without the camera, but this just goes on in this channel in the front, and then there's another channel in the back that the back side clip goes to. So go ahead, get those on, get this jacked up, and get the last wheel on, and we will be done with this lift kit finally. All right, so there we have it. It is sitting on its own weight now. It does seem to be squatting a bit in the back, so I'm not exactly thrilled about that. I wanted to make sure it was level. I know the front will settle a little bit, so hopefully that'll settle and even out. If not, these rear leaf springs are pretty well shot, so they don't look to be in the best of shape. So I may end up having to change those out to get the back end back to where it's supposed to be sitting. I have a feeling it's sagging a bit just due to those springs not being exactly perfect. Yeah, from here, this angle, I have the jack sitting right there, so it looks like the front end's jacked up a little bit, but there's nothing sitting on that. It is all on its own weight. Now, so I have a lot of cleaning up to do in here, so I'm going to clean up a bit. They go back through, torque down all the bolts. If you're paying attention, you might have noticed that I did not reinstall the pitman arm or the front steering linkages yet. I did get the new steering linkage set from Superlift that I'm going to install. I'll do that in another video. Right now, I want to make sure that now that everything's on its own weight, go through, torque down everything, make sure everything's tight, get everything cleaned up a bit. Then I will do that steering linkage. I'll make a video along with that. And in the meantime, I also, before I do that, need to get the steering wheel back on. The blinker switch was broken, and something I thought was going to be a quick, easy fix, something I didn't even bother recording a video when I started, and it has turned into sort of a nightmare. So I probably will end up making a video where I'm at on that, because that was nowhere near as simple as a process as I thought it was going to be, and I've gone down a pretty deep rabbit hole with that one. So hopefully if I could make a video, I could save you some trouble and keep you from doing the same. But yeah, overall, very happy with the lift. These are the wheels and tires that I got. They're 35 by 12 and a half, 15s, Federal, I don't know how you say that, Coragia, I suppose. And they are just 15 by 10 ion alloys, just like a bullet style rim. It's not too far off from the original wheels that were on there, except for they are already cleaned up. And they are a wider rim, so I could put the wider tire on there with no problems. It's a little bit more of an offset. So it's got a little bit of poke on the wheels there, but not much. Just a tiny bit of poke. As far as steering clearances, it looks like I'll be fine. We'll find out for sure once I get the steering linkages hooked up. But like I said, I'm going to do that in another video. For now, I'm going to clean up this garage, go through, torque down all the bolts that are there, double check all the connections and everything. Then we can get that steering linkage on and take this for a spin to see how it handles. And you know, it did say it would take about 100 miles or so for the front end to completely settle. So we'll see how it stands at that. But it's still have a feeling I'm going to need to redo those rear leaf springs at some point anyway, and that may be what's needed to level out that stance a bit more. But we'll see what it looks like once it settles. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, smash that subscribe button, and I will see you next time.